Coming up on the J-Man Show, we will discuss the Detroit Red Wings trade deadline, and then we will get into our mock draft 2.0. All that and more coming up right here on the J-Man Show. Hey, welcome into the program. Glad to be here with you today. That's right, coming up, we're actually going to talk about the Detroit Red Wings. That's something that I don't think we've done since the NHL off-season, which is going to be kind of fun for me as being a Red Wings fan. And then, we'll get into our mock draft 2.0. A lot of changes from our mock draft 1.0 in the National Football League. So, we're going to get into all that. We're going to get into a little bit more as well. Before we do all of that stuff, all that fun and exciting stuff, I got to clear up some business. And that is, you can stay connected to this podcast through our social media pages. Facebook, The J-Man Show, both Instagram and Twitter at _The J-Man Show. And hey, while you're on YouTube, you might as well go over and hit the little subscribe button, because you can get updated on any new content that is uploaded on to the J-Man Sports YouTube channel. So if you're a fan of the J-Man Show, if you're a fan of All Time Podcast, or if you're just a fan of J-Man Sports in general, just head on over, just hit the little subscribe button, and you can get updated on any new content that comes about. Alrighty, let's get into the Red Wings. I'm actually kind of excited to talk about the Red Wings. I have not talked about them since the off-season, since after the NHL draft, when they were hosed and did not get a top 3 pick for some unknown reason. Gary Bettman. But this is exciting to talk about the Wings. They've actually done something rather exciting with this past NHL trade deadline. Now, I know there's going to be a lot of Leafs fans that are like, oh, man, why can't you talk about the Leafs as well? I mean, the Leafs did a lot of trades. Can you just evaluate them? Well, number one, I'm not a hockey guy, so if I were to evaluate the Leafs trades, you wouldn't get a very good opinion from me, number one. Number two, I have not talked about the Wings in a long time. They deserve a little. They deserve a little chance to shine as well. I mean, just because they stink doesn't mean we don't deserve to talk about them. And I've been wanting to talk about the Wings for a while. It's just, again, they suck, and there's a lot of other things to talk about. And then it's like, oh, hey, yeah, the Wings, they're still a thing, aren't they? So that's why it's going to be all Wings here for the first little bit. I want to talk about the Red Wings. I want to talk about what happened at the trade deadline for the Wings, because I'm actually kind of excited for what happened at the deadline. I'm excited for what the future is for this Red Wings team. Now, I just mentioned I'm not a hockey buff. No, I'm not one of these people that follows all the plus minuses, that follows that's intense into all the stats and ice times and all that stuff. I am with that with baseball. When it comes to baseball, I'm all stats, every kind of thing that you can think of. But with hockey, no. I follow the Red Wings. I follow the Canadian teams. After that, everyone knows the Buffalo Sabres have absolutely sucked ass this year. I don't think that's really shocking anybody to say. They have been terrible this year. After that, like I said, I follow it here, follow it there, but I more intensely follow the Red Wings. Obviously, I am a Red Wings fan. And then I follow a lot of the Canadian teams just because, obviously, TSN, Sportsnet, that's what they cover. But obviously, yes, you follow the Lightning, you follow the Penguins and the Blackhawks and the Bruins and the Ducks and the Coyotes and all that stuff, right? But like I said, I'm not a huge hockey buff. I don't get into all the stats. I don't get into all of that, all that kind of stuff. But what I love getting into, it doesn't matter what sport it is the trade deadlines. And every year when the baseball trade deadline comes on, I'm like, don't watch it, don't pay attention to it, nothing's going to happen, nothing ever happens, all this stuff. And then I end up getting roped into it because, leading up to it a couple days, there's a big trade that happens, and you're like, oh, well, now the deadline's going to be amazing. So you end up watching it, paying attention, and it's great. It's fantastic. Last month, I had no idea that the NBA trade deadline was going on. Usually, again, I know when the NBA trade deadline is on a typical year, but with COVID and with everything that's just changed with these sports leagues, I, for some reason, thought the NBA trade deadline was in April, not in March. So when all of a sudden one of my friends was like, "Hey, it's the trade deadline today," I was like, "Oh, hello! I should probably talk about that." And I started following it, started following some of the trades that happened, and there were a lot of trades that happened on the NBA trade deadline, and then obviously the NHL trade deadline. It was, I think, just as exciting. I mean, these trade deadlines again with these teams losing some money and not having a lot of revenue, a lot of these expensive players, they have to be moved, right? And if they're not performing, they have to be moved because these teams can't afford them. And so it was. So you're seeing a lot more trades like what we've seen with teams like the Red Wings, trading some players away, getting some rather expensive players in return or expiring contracts in return, but also getting some draft picks as well. That's not just an NHL thing. It's been in the NBA. It was in the NFL. Major League Baseball, you can't trade picks, so that doesn't happen all that much. But you get more prospects that way. But yeah, no. What I loved about the Red Wings trade deadline was the Anthony Mantha trade. Now they made two trades at the trade deadline. They traded defenseman John Merrill to the Montreal Canadiens for Hayden Verbeek or Verbeek, however you pronounce the last name, and a fifth-round pick from the Canadiens. So, like that trade, obviously, Merrill was a productive defensive player here for the Red Wings. Again, nothing special. Wasn't, I would say, a top four defenseman on a lot of other teams, but he was productive here with the Wings, and they were able to get a fifth-round pick out of it. And so, yeah, love that trade. But that's not the trade that everyone is oohing and ahhing and the trade that people are talking about. It's the Anthony Mantha trade that everyone is talking about. And so the Red Wings traded forward Anthony Mantha to the Washington Capitals for a couple of forwards, Jakob Bernan and Richard Panik. And then they also got a 2021 first-round pick and a 2022 second-round pick from the Capitals. And I loved this trade. This trade came in at the last minute, and I absolutely loved it. And there are a lot of Red Wings fans that actually weren't super happy with it because they love Anthony Mantha. And I can understand why. Anthony Mantha has grown up in the Red Wings organization. He has been relatively productive here or there. He's been touted as the most talented Red Wing on their roster. But why I was excited for this trade is because I've been asking for Anthony Mantha to be traded for a number of seasons. And it boils down to not his talent, but it boils down to his effort level. And there were concerns about his effort level. Ever since he's become a regular with the Red Wings, he's been benched multiple times for a lack of effort. And in the NHL, when your shifts are only like a minute and a half long, you got to give it your all. Every time you're out there. And there were times that he just didn't. And it could be a couple things. Could be that maybe he didn't like playing in Detroit, even though he did sign an extension here with the Wings. It also could have been the fact that he was kind of comfortable here and thought that maybe, he is the best player, that his poop don't stink, and that's kind of like a hockey version of a diva a little bit. Which I'd still take a hockey diva over basketball or football diva or even a baseball diva to be completely honest. But that's why I wanted him traded for a number of years back, even when Ken Holland was the GM. Again, I love the talent. Problem is, he's never put it all together. This guy should be averaging 60, 70 points a season at the very least. Instead, he's getting 40s, 50-point seasons. And again, obviously injuries have played a factor. He has been hurt, and he's had some injuries where he's been out for a lengthy time. But it's the effort level for me. And to me, hockey is all about effort, which is why hockey to me has become more interesting because I love watching all these guys give it their all for a minute and a half, for all their shifts, right? And that's why hockey has become something that I've started to enjoy watching. Because you have players giving it their all. And even if players aren't giving it their all, sometimes you can't even tell. Unfortunately, with Anthony Mantha, you could kind of tell. He was a guy that was going to the net. He's a 6'4", 200-pound forward. Yes, I understand that he's got a great outside shot. He's a sniper. And I thought he was going to be a 60, 70 consistent point guy for the Red Wings. I thought he was going to be a 20 to 30 goal guy for the Red Wings. I really did. With a possibility of upper 30 goal range for the Wings. And again, when you are the most talented player or one of the more talented players on a bad team, teams are going to focus on you. They're not going to let you beat them necessarily. And to counteract that, you have to do the little things. You have to get in front of the net. The NHL is played in front of the net. Hockey is played in front of the net. You got to get tips. You got to get rebounds. You got to be that point in front of the net. And especially when you're a big body like that, when you're 6'4", 200 pounds, Dylan Larkin being 5'11", 190 pounds, yeah, you still want him to get down in the front of the net as well, but he's not going to have as much success as what a guy like Anthony Mantha would. And so, he just wouldn't. He would take games off. He wouldn't do that. He wouldn't go. Wouldn't put himself in that position. Wouldn't finish checks, and that bothers me. And maybe now with the Capitals, he's going to be more energized, going to be more invigorated, and he's going to, rather than just flash that potential, he's going to show it more consistently. And I hope so. I think I really like Anthony Mantha. I was a fan of Anthony Mantha when he was coming up with the Red Wings, when he was that can't-miss prospect, when he was the untouchable guy that the Red Wings were never going to get rid of for any sort of reason. So I was a fan of him. I thought that he could be, for a lack of a better player comparison, I thought he could be like a little bit, and again, it's hard for me to say it, but a little bit like Alex Ovechkin, right? That sniper, that guy who's going to, again, go in front of the net a little bit. Again, I'm not expecting him to go out in front of the net every single shift, every time on the ice. I'm not expecting that all the time. Again, he does have a great outside shot. But when your outside shot isn't working for you, you got to get in front of the net. You got to do all the little things to affect the game. And he just wouldn't do that. That's something that Alex Ovechkin does do from time to time. And again, that's what I thought that we were going to get. I loved the size, the makeup. I thought that he was relatively he had speed for being the size that he was. Again, great outside shot. I think I've said that 3 or 4 times. Again, sometimes I sound like a broken record because I repeat a lot of things, but I do believe that he had a great shot, or still has a great shot from the outside. It's just the little things he just doesn't do that he could do that he just doesn't do, that frustrated me when in his time with the Red Wings. And I love this trade because I love the draft capital you got back in return. Yes, do the Red Wings need more forwards? Absolutely, 100%. They need as many bodies as they can possibly get, right? Because if you're the Red Wings, you stink. You're terrible, right? Everyone knows that. You are a bottom 3 NHL team. You're predicted to be a bottom 3 NHL team coming into this year. You were the worst team in the history of the franchise last year, and one of the worst teams in the history of the NHL last season. Okay? So everyone basically expected nothing from you. And so you need as many bodies as you can get. You need as many guys with potential as what you can get. And you need to trade off some of the so-called talent that you have on your team to be able to acquire more draft picks. Because, look, out of all the drafts, maybe aside from the Major League Baseball draft last season, but of all the drafts in all the major sports, this NHL draft is going to be one of the more difficult drafts in recent history. Again, maybe other than the baseball draft last season, because again, those players didn't get to play. High school or college baseball players didn't get to play. And this year, other than the World Juniors, again, the CHL, they just canceled the Memorial Cup. They basically canceled their entire season. They were supposed to come back, but then due to COVID, they didn't. The European leagues were still going on, but they kind of had to do the whole pause, restart thing a couple of times as well. So it's going to be very difficult to evaluate talent for this upcoming draft in the NHL. And so getting as many picks as you possibly can doesn't only help you for this year's draft, but can help you maybe make trades if you're going to trade down, if you're going to trade up, if you're going to maybe trade those picks for other future picks coming up in future drafts. So you can do a lot of things with a lot of draft capital, and that's why I'm always in favor, if you can get it, do it. And that's why in baseball I'm always in favor of gaining as many prospects as you possibly can, because again, the more prospects you have, the more chances that you have for those guys to hit. more chances of those guys becoming more productive. Just like when you have more draft picks, you're having more draft selections, which means you have more opportunity to pick a guy who's going to be productive. So again, I love it from that standpoint. I love it that it was Anthony Mantha, and I love it that that Yzerman looked at him and kind of said, you know what, you're talented, you're really talented, but you're not fitting with what we're doing. We're going to move on from you, and they got a haul for him. They got more than what I thought that they would even get for Anthony Mantha. Again, just based on the fact that the guy has been hurt, he hasn't hit that production level that we've been wanting him to hit, and the fact that he does have effort issues, I didn't think that you'd get that much for him. So I love what the Red Wings did this trade deadline. I love even getting the 5th round pick for Merrill as well. I love getting draft capital. As much as it's great to have players on your team, and as much as it sucks to see them go, if you can get draft capital for you, if you can get prospects back in return, you take it. You take any opportunity you possibly can. And again, you weren't going anywhere with Anthony Mantha anyways, so you might as well trade him. And again, the Red Wings are so depleted of... I understand the Red Wings are so depleted of talent. I get that. But you're not going to get any better by just holding on to talent that's not being productive. Like, if you were to ask me, who are you going to trade between Dylan Larkin or Anthony Mantha, it would be Anthony Mantha. Dylan Larkin, not only because he's the captain, but he's from the state of Michigan. He grew up a Red Wings fan. He went to the University of Michigan. He's a Michigan guy. He's a Michigander. That's not going to be well received, even though his production level has not been great. You're not going to all of a sudden just go and trade Dylan Larkin. And I love Dylan Larkin. Again, I have a hat signed by Dylan Larkin. Dylan Larkin's a nice dude. Right now, he's not showing that he's a top 6 forward on any team in the NHL. But again, could be lack of talent also around him. But yeah, you weren't going to trade Dylan Larkin for anything. So Anthony Mantha was kind of the guy that was the odd man out in that situation. So again, I love what the Red Wings did for the trade deadline. And look, it's difficult to evaluate Steve Yzerman. It really is. Again, he comes here from the Lightning. He rebuilt the Lightning into what they are right now. And so based on that track record, you're saying, yay, like you're excited. Obviously, because he's a former Red Wing, you're also really excited. But again, he came here, and it was a couple loads of poop. And he's kind of had to try to scoop it out. It's kind of like when you watch those house flipping shows, or those Reno type shows, like on HGTV or whatever the state's version of HGTV is. And you know, they get this house, and it's a complete and utter gut job. They have to gut it from basically everything from the roof down, and anything from the edge of the curb or the edge of the road to the back, to the end, to the edge of the property line, the backyard. Like, everything has to go. That's what the Red Wings were. They were a complete teardown. They barely had any sort of structure, and he has had to come in and try to rebuild it. And it's hard to evaluate him. You love what he's done. I've loved what he's done with this offseason, acquiring some players that were on expiring contracts that cost a little bit more, but basically taking salary dumps, getting those draft picks in return for taking those guys, because he put the Red Wings in a great cap situation. Something that I believe Ken Holland didn't do a great job with the Red Wings. Again, Ken Holland did a great job early on with the Red Wings. He did. And he did a great job extending the 25-year playoff run. The issue was, again, he didn't have the money. He was spending way too much on non-productive players. He was spending too much on older players, on older free agents coming in here to just try to extend that run. And that was, I think, why a lot of fans were frustrated with Ken Holland down the stretch. But like what Steve Yzerman has done is basically he's cut the cap. And in the season where a lot of teams could not afford a lot of players heading into this season, the Red Wings were able to play that role of, hey, we'll take on your bad contracts if you give us draft picks for them. And I've loved that strategy, and I've liked his drafts, but again, we can't evaluate them because we haven't seen any of these players yet, or we've seen very little of his players that he has drafted up here with the big club. Again, if you're a Detroit sports fan, and again, all 4 teams are rebuilding, it's kind of depressing. Like, you start thinking about it, and I heard this on sports talk radio in Detroit. I think it was last week, maybe the week before, kind of ranking the rebuilds of the Detroit teams. I'd obviously put the Pistons at number 1 because we're seeing the young guys right now. Obviously, Killian Hayes hasn't gotten, again, with him being hurt, we haven't gotten a lot of chances to see him play, but we've seen Sadiq Bey, we've seen Beef Stew, we've even seen a little bit of Saban Lee, we've seen a couple of these other younger guys that they've acquired in trades perform very well. Then you start going at number 2, and, I mean, you would think the Tigers would be up in that position. I wouldn't put them in that position. You start looking at the Lions, and you're like, well, again, they haven't really done anything to this point. I mean, yes, they've gotten rid of some bad contracts, but they haven't drafted anybody yet, which is what everybody's waiting for. And then you get the Red Wings, who have done a lot of roster reconstruction, but again, we haven't seen these young guys yet. So if it were me, it'd probably go the Pistons, Lions, Red Wings, and then the Tigers, which the Tigers and Red Wings are interchangeable. But I feel like with Steve Yzerman, you just can't necessarily evaluate him yet. You can be excited for the moves that he has done, because I think that he's made the right moves. Now we have to see his talent evaluation work out. Because if it doesn't, then the Red Wings are going to be in a rebuild way longer than what we even expect. Again, they're not going to be probably relevant for the next 3 seasons. In all honesty, they're not going to be relevant next season by any means. Then you hope that in 2 seasons you start to see more and more of their younger players come up. And then you hope that in that 3rd season they can compete for a 7th, 8th seed in the Eastern Conference. You're hoping at that point, and then to build off of that and to go farther and to do something that the Leafs haven't actually done. Because, again, think about what the Leafs did, right? They tore it down. They rebuilt it. They got their core players. They got Mitch Marner and Austin Matthews, Nylander. Then they did the big free agent signing with John Tavares. And they were able to get into they were able to get from one of the worst teams in the NHL to all of a sudden becoming a playoff contending team. Again, 7th, 8th seed. They took the Capitals the first year that they got into the postseason with Austin Matthews and that. They took them to 5 games, and they ended up losing in the first round. Problem is, they haven't built onto that. They've only continued to lose in the first round. What you're hoping is to build on that, go from the first round to the second round. Then the next year you go from the first round, second round to the third round. And then you go, hopefully, then to the actual Stanley Cup, and then hopefully you win the Stanley Cup. That's kind of how you would like it. Not how it always works out, but that's how you'd like it. And that's what you want to see from the Red Wings. But again, that's still 2-3 years away. So, again, if you're Steve Yzerman, why wouldn't you have taken the Red Wings job? Right? Why wouldn't you have taken this job? You get to basically reconstruct the entire roster, and you have a completely long leash because you can basically do whatever you want. Because you're not going to be good for a lot of years. So, hey, you got job security for 6-7 years because we're not going to be anything relevant at all the majority of that contract. So, again, I'm loving what Steve Yzerman is doing. Completely loving what Steve Yzerman is doing. I love what he did here at the trade deadline. I'm interested to see now what he does in the offseason. I don't think Jeff Blashill is going to be back, so I'm interested to see who he hires at that position. And I can't wait for these young guys. Like, for me, not necessarily being a hockey buff, I follow a lot of prospect channels in the NHL because I love prospects. I love evaluating prospects. I love looking at prospects. And I can't wait for the Red Wings prospects to come up. I just can't. Then I can get excited about watching hockey. Right now, I just watch it. I watch it to watch the Leafs lose. To be completely honest, that's why I watch hockey, is to watch the Leafs lose. Once the Leafs lose, then there's not really a rooting interest because usually Edmonton kind of wets the bed a little bit with Connor McDavid. Again, I'm a huge Connor McDavid fan, but usually Edmonton is nowhere to be found. And then the other Canadian teams are iffy at best. And so there really isn't a whole big rooting interest at that point. But I can't wait to be excited to watch these Red Wings and to watch these young players grow with the Red Wings and see what Steve Yzerman has up his sleeve, because he's following the same playbook that he did in Tampa, and I'm interested to see how it works out for the Red Wings. If it works out similarly what it did with the Lightning, Red Wings fans, be excited. Be excited for this trade. Be excited for this trade deadline. Be excited for the future of the Detroit Red Wings. All right, coming up after the break, we're going to get into our mock draft 2.0. A lot of changes from 1.0, I do have to say. And we'll see how much people actually like me after it. So stay tuned. Hey, it's the J-Man here to talk about the new show Ball Diamond Podcast, part of the new podcast series from J-Man Sports. Now, we know baseball's losing fans quite rapidly, but we also know that there are still loyal fans of America's pastime. And if you are like me and love trades, rumors, prospects, pace of play, and just overall talking about the game of baseball, then the Ball Diamond Podcast is for you. You can follow along with Ball Diamond Podcast through our social media pages, Facebook Ball Diamond Podcast, Instagram and Twitter at Ball Diamond Pod. Ball Diamond Podcast is exclusively streaming on the new J-Man Sports YouTube channel. Hey, welcome back. So we announced last week that we were going to do 4 mock drafts. We're going to do the top 10 in the NFL draft with no trades. And we're going to do 4 of these leading up to the NFL draft that's going to happen here at the end of April. Last week, I'm not going to read off all the teams because I'm not going to do all that because I already did it last week. But if you know the top 10, it's the Jaguars, Jets, Niners, Falcons, Bengals, Dolphins, Lions, Panthers, Broncos, and the Cowboys. Okay? And so last week, it was Trevor Lawrence 1, Zach Wilson 2, Justin Fields 3, Trey Lance 4, Penei Sewell 5, Devontae Smith 6, Kyle Pitts 7, Jamar Chase 8, Mac Jones 9, and Patrick Surtain 10. That's what we had last week. So this week I want to change it up a little bit. I wanted to, again, you hear different things, you hear different rumors, and so I kind of want to change it up. There are a lot of changes. There are some that are similar, but there are a lot of changes within this top 10, more within the bottom 8 of the top 10. Because the top 2 have not changed. If you want to hear my evaluations on those 2, you can go listen to last week's episode, because I'm not going to explain it each and every week why I like Zach Wilson, why I like Trevor Lawrence as well. So I'm not going to go into that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read through the players that I have being picked in the top 10, and then I will do my evaluations. I'll tell you why I have those guys being picked after the fact. So here it is. So, with the first pick in 2021 NFL Draft, the Jaguars select Trevor Lawrence. With the second pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the New York Jets select Zach Wilson. Again, those were the exact same from last week. With the third pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the San Francisco 49ers select quarterback Mac Jones out of Alabama. With the fourth pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Atlanta Falcons select Penei Sewell, tackle out of Oregon. With the fifth pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Cincinnati Bengals select tight end / wide receiver Kyle Pitts out of Florida. With the sixth pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Miami Dolphins select linebacker Micah Parsons out of Penn State. With the seventh pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select quarterback Justin Fields. With the eighth pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Carolina Panthers select Jamar Chase, wide receiver LSU, which, by the way, Justin Fields, quarterback out of Ohio State. Forgot to mention that. With the ninth pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Denver Broncos select quarterback Trey Lance out of North Dakota State. And with the 10th pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Dallas Cowboys select Rashawn Slater, tackle out of Northwestern. So like I said, the top 2 guys, I'm not going to go back into saying the same things. Again, they're To me, franchise quarterbacks, they're great. Trevor Lawrence is could be the generational type quarterback, all that. You can go listen to last week's episode on the evaluation of those guys. But we'll start here with the Niners and Mac Jones. So, look, Mac Jones is an interesting prospect. Look, he's not a typical quarterback that you would think of today, right? He's not mobile. He is your strict pocket passer, but the guy is smart. The guy is accurate, and the guy plays extremely well against the blitz. Was the top quarterback against blitzes this season. Fantastic. And like I said, he's not mobile, but that's not something that you always have to look at as a quarterback. Again, having athleticism at the quarterback position is nice. It's a luxury to have, but what you're looking at the quarterback position is arm strength, arm accuracy, and his ability to read coverages. That's what you're looking at. And Mac Jones, to me, checks all those boxes. Does he have the strongest arm? No. But does he have a strong arm? Yes. Can he push the ball down the field? Yes. Is he accurate? Yes. Is he great at reading coverages? I think so. I think he's fantastic at reading coverages, and he's great against the blitz. So, again, and also, you've heard a lot of Mac Jones being taken here by the 49ers in chatter amongst many NFL analysts. So that's also why I have him picked here at number 3. But I do think that he is probably he could be the third best quarterback in this draft, in all honesty. Penei Sewell going 4 to Atlanta. Look, when Atlanta was really good, what did they have? A really good offensive line. If they want to continue to build it with Matt Ryan, which for all intents and purposes they're still interested in doing, whether it be because they can't move on from that contract, or whether it be because they just don't want to move on from him, they need a better offensive line. They need to protect him. And that's why I like Penei Sewell being picked here at number 4. At the end of the day, he could be picked anywhere from 4 to 7. Any of those teams, even if you wanted to go 8 to the Panthers as well, any of those teams are going to grab him. And I just think that if you are Atlanta and you want to continue to build around an older quarterback in Matt Ryan, you got to protect him. And Penei Sewell is your best bet in being able to do so. Then 5, Kyle Pitts. Look, similarly to the reason as to why I had him being picked 7 last week to the Lions, is because, again, this guy can do everything. This guy's going to be the first wide receiver, outside offensive player taken in this draft, I think, because he can play outside the wide receiver at this position, he can play on the inside of the wide receiver position, and he can play in at the line at the tight end position. He's a unicorn. He can do so many different things for you. And if you're the Cincinnati Bengals, you need to add weapons for Joe Burrow. Last week I had them taking Penei Sewell because they need to protect Joe Burrow. This week I have them taking a playmaker for Joe Burrow, especially in the red zone. Could you imagine this guy in the red zone being 6'6" and being able to go high point that football? Guy's going to, I think, be a very rock-solid NFL wide receiver. And again, like I said, he's going to be like a unicorn out there on the field. Now, Micah Parsons being picked 6 by the Dolphins. Look, Micah Parsons is the best defensive player in this draft. I think that if you are the Dolphins, you could still use some playmakers on that defensive side. I understand you want to add more probably on the offensive side, which is why last week I had them picking Devontae Smith. But, look, I read early on that the Dolphins really liked Micah Parsons. Look, there are questions surrounding Micah Parsons, right? His off-the-field issues. But I love what he said during his pro day, and that was he's not going to let those off-the-field issues that he had when he was 17, 18 years old affect him now. And I like that he said that, because I think it's honestly true. That happened when he was younger, shouldn't have happened, and he wants to move on from it. And I think that NFL teams like that, and especially they like a guy who can run an unofficial 40 time at a 4.39. And a guy that makes your defense better. I mean, he made the Penn State defense extremely better in 2019, and you saw it because in 2020, that defense stunk. So, again, I think if you're the Dolphins, you could still use a young playmaker. You got your quarterback of the future on the offensive side in Tua. Get your quarterback of the future for your defense in Micah Parsons. That's a great way to build a team. Then Justin Fields to the Lions. Look, I think a lot of Lions fans would not like this pick. And honestly, if you would have told me about 2 months ago, I would have said, nah, I don't want Justin Fields. But here's why I think that this is a possibility. Look, I was high on Justin Fields last season when he was the second best quarterback in college football, and I was even starting to say, is he actually the best quarterback in college football? Like, is he better than Trevor Lawrence? And I was kind of having that debate even to start this season. Then this year happens, and look, Trevor Lawrence continued at a steady pace, whereas Justin Fields fell off for many different reasons. Obviously, COVID was probably the main reason as to why his production kind of fell off. It was towards the end of the season, he's having different wide receivers, different offensive line, and that's hard to do for at any level in football. Is when you have to start, having different receivers, you're having different running backs, you're having different offensive personnel. It's difficult, the quarterback position, but. And so I was kind of down on him. I was watching Zach Wilson perform excellently at BYU, and I was kind of like, yep, but definitely Zach Wilson passes Justin Fields. I definitely want Zach Wilson way over Justin Fields. But then I watched the playoff run that he had. He didn't play great in the title game, the Big Ten title game against Northwestern. But then you look at what he did against Clemson, you look at what he did against Alabama. And he showed toughness, he showed his athleticism, he showed his accuracy, he showed his ability to not just be a one-read quarterback. And he kind of proved that to me that he is the second best quarterback in this draft. And if the Lions can get him with the seventh pick, I love it. I think a lot of fans don't like Justin Fields, A, because he played for Ohio State, and B, because he's kind of silent, he's quiet. He's not a vocal leader. He's not like the rah-rah kind of guy like what you look at, like what Zach Wilson is necessarily, right? Justin Fields goes about his leadership very quietly, and you just kind of traded away a guy that did the same thing. But Justin Fields is athletic. Justin Fields has a big arm. Justin Fields has an accurate arm. The issues that he has, again, being a silent leader, he does have a tendency to be a one-read quarterback, but I think most young quarterbacks do. I would be ecstatic if the Lions could choose Justin Fields. I don't know. Maybe I'm alone on that, but I would be ecstatic if they could choose Justin Fields with the seventh pick. Ja'Marr Chase being pick number 8. Look, Carolina needs as many offensive weapons as they can get to help Sam Darnold, their new quarterback, their new franchise quarterback. And I had them picking Ja'Marr Chase last week, and I still like that pick here this week. I think he's the best pure wide receiver in this draft. I'm sorry, Devontae Smith. I love Devontae Smith. But I think Smith's going to be a great slot receiver. I don't know on the outside, just again due to his size. Ja'Marr Chase has the size, 6'1", 190, 200 pounds. He's fast on the outside. He's got good hands. He has the potential to be like the Justin Jefferson of this draft. He just does. Then Trey Lance being picked number 9. I mean, look, he is probably the fifth best quarterback in this draft. I don't know necessarily if he's going to start right away in Denver or whether it be Drew Lock, but they have that ability with Drew Lock, even though, yes, he's not the answer. They could still start him to bring Trey Lance along. And again, you're talking about a boomer bust prospect with Trey Lance. The guy is tremendously athletic, and he's got a huge arm. He's accurate. Problem is, he is a one-read quarterback. He didn't play at the top level of college football, and he also didn't play this year at all. He played once this year. And also, he's extremely young. So, again, boomer bust prospect, but I love Trey Lance. I don't know if he's going to necessarily work out, but he's got the potential to be the Josh Allen of this draft, right? Josh Allen at Wyoming didn't play the best competition, but he had all the raw tools that you loved. Same thing here with Trey Lance, except I think he's a little bit more accurate. And then Rashawn Slater going to the Cowboys. Look, I just kind of thought that, they could use an offensive lineman. I know they are very high on Kyle Pitts. They want Kyle Pitts. The problem is, I'm not predicting any trades. I'm not mocking any trades. And so for them to stay at this selection, they could use players on defense. They could use players on offense. I think that they could use a solidified offensive lineman. And again, Slater is a guy who may not necessarily come in and be a starter right away. He's not necessarily that 6'6" guy at tackle. He's smaller, but he is as strong as an ox. And you need those types of guys. He's going to be your heart and hustle guy on the offensive line and potential to be a starter for 10, 12 years here in the NFL. So again, that's my mock draft 2.0. We'll get into 3.0 next week. I am very excited for this year's NFL draft, just to see where some of these guys go, see where some of these guys who didn't play this past year, where they end up going. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be exciting to watch here at the end of the month. I want to thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting the podcast. And don't worry, you definitely will be hearing from me soon. Thanks.